stage is yours, and audience is eagerly looking forward to learn a lot of things from you. The stage is all yours, please. Thank you.
Hopefully I'm audible. Yeah, this is working, and
Here
I
it
will
is.
need this.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Please set the timing.
I was asked to create a presentation about the Flexo economy. Considering this is the very rising element of technology in this part of the world, this will be a blast to tell you about how is it growing, where is it growing to, and where is it heading. So I'll start, why Flexo? I guess everyone knows why Flexo, why you're picking this technology, but I'll give you a brief interview because it will lead to a couple of points later. I'll continue with the global market. I will tell a little bit about the Asia's rise, but it's actually a very bad choice of the naming of the section because it's Asian dominance, not rise. I'll continue with Europe. I'll tell a couple of words about my home country, also my region, and I will finish with the challenges and opportunities. I'll also give you a brief information about the industry reports we have available. So let us start. So why Flexo? Well, first of all, it's on the end of everyone's tongues is sustainability, a green economy, and speaking about green ink. So when we talk about green technologies, we know that Flexo has almost 60% of water-based or UV curable inks, what translates into 90% reduction in contrast to the solvent-based inks. And this very nicely applies to all the legislation coming in, which is EU-REACH, FDA, and zero pollution initiatives for sustainable packaging. Second of all, we see that the changeover times are being dramatically reduced in comparison to different technologies in printing, of course, when it comes to Flexo. We're approaching the 15 minutes marker, the changeover time between jobs, and this is amazing, and this is one of the elements which we need to, we as a Flexo community, you need to capitalize on. And another thing is the support for diverse substrates, which is flexible films, paper, and corrugated boards. This gives a huge opportunity for Flexo printers to apply to very different segments of the market. But let us continue. So what is the worth? My predecessor already told that the value of the packaging market is 1.2 trillion. That's a lot of money. That's about there was a study given that people cannot really conceptualize how is $1 trillion. It's too much to visualize, but it is worth that much. And printing industry and printing packaging market is worth about from 350 to 500 million. The estimations are rough because it depends on which elements are you including or excluding in the printing packaging market. So let us assume this is about 440. And Flexo is worth almost half of it, which is very, very good part of the market. Of course, printed packaging. And as we can see, the growth rates is about 4% all around the world. But this is one information that I want to include because Asia is outpacing almost doubly the average for the world growth for printed packaging market. And this is truly amazing. It has the largest packaging market revenue share in the world. It's about 40%. And the Flexo printing market, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about, is almost 76 to 78 billion, which is about 35% of the market. It has a huge share, and it is going to expand even more, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a second. So who is the major player? And everyone knows it's China because it's the largest market. It is the most advanced technology. So value-wise, it's about 13 billion. It has a little bit moderate growth considering this region because it's 5.5%, but we see a huge investments being done in the installation of Flexo presses. It's about 20% increase annually, which is a huge investment. Also, it is also being incentivized by Chinese government to increase the share of Flexo in the economy. But the next thing, the second major player is Japan, which is worth about 9.1 billion USD with a little bit higher growth than China, 6.4. But it's, as we can see, they focus on the automation and robotization. It's about 15 to 20% of the Flexo capex is spent of automatization of reel changing by robots, which is, and I saw a couple these machines recently. Last week I was in Chinese printing houses, and they're introducing a lot of automation into the workforce, which is a trend, of course, which you already heard from my previous speaker. The next countries I want to tell you about is South Korea, which was in the previous slide, and Thailand and Vietnam, which have double-digit CAGR in Flexo packaging, which is it demonstrates the growth rate of the region, because since it's double-digit, it also outpaces the average country's growth in the world. And the Southeast Asia, the packaging for the demand for packaging is also almost equal to the growth rate, which is 12% year over year. You can also say that, okay, so with this demand and this amount of packaging being produced here already, what is the demand for, what is the number of presses being installed in the market? It's 20% more annually. You can see the double-digit growth rates are kind of a trend when you talk about Asia. But let us zoom in on India. And India is the third player, according to research, and it is going to grow up to almost 10 billion by 2030. The growth rate is also double-digit, and along with Vietnam, is the fastest growing region. It's the fastest growing country in this region, which gives you a lot of perspectives coming into the future. But why is it happening? What is the driving force for this growth rate? First of all, population, but second of all, also e-commerce boom, as we all see that e-commerce is booming, and it will still be growing in the upcoming years. We can see that it's almost 50% growth rate for corrugated cartons, paper and paperboard, flexible materials, and 30% in labels. This is you cannot talk about these kind of numbers in other parts of the world, which is a key demand driver. We can also see that, as my predecessor told, that there is a lot of legislature being forced into the market, and the green trend is also being seen in this industry. By 2025, the recycled content requirements for packaging will be 30% for rigid plastics, 10% for flexible packaging, and 5% for multi-layer packaging. But these are the values which are not going to be reduced in the future. These values are only going to go up. And the key differentiation driver for producers and companies printing is going to be the adherence to eco-innovation, and the second of all, talent. But about talent and talent acquisition, I'm going to tell you in a second. So let's just compare. I told you a couple of words about Asian market. Let me tell you a couple of words about European market, European Flexo. It's third worldwide in packaging, and there's actually no surprises here, because we're a smaller market, a little bit less people, and the value in Flexo is about, let's say, 60 billion USD. And the market share is almost the same. It's like 25%, it's almost the same as in packaging. And the growth rate is 4.4. So you could see the trend that Europe is a little bit lower than the global average. But, well, since statistics is a fickle study, you can know that when there are downs, you have to see ups, and ups is in Asia, and downs you can see in Europe in different points. But Europe has its own agenda. It focuses on automation, on hybrid digital flexo presses, and sustainable inks. And sustainable inks is actually a key word in Europe about printing, because by 2027 there has to be 100% low VOC compliance for ink manufacturers in Europe. But continuing on Europe, I can tell you a couple of words about Polish market. And Polish market is the second highest export market in Europe. We own almost 11% of the share of the whole Europe when it comes to exporting. And also a couple of facts: Poland is sixth in printing books globally, and second in printing calendars, which is maybe not the share of the market, but I wanted to tell you that this relatively small country in comparison to India has also its roots and its future also connected to printing, and also in Flexo, which is the valuation is 2.2 billion with a growth rate of 4.5. So a little bit of table for a summary for those of you making pictures. You can make a good summary here to see what are the things that these regions are focusing on. So Europe is moderate growth, and Asia has a high growth. Sustainability focus in Europe is 100%, and Europe is driving the eco race right now when it comes to legislation. Because by 2027, as I said, 100% low VOC ins are being mandated. There's growing adoption of low VOC in India and in Asia. And also, next element that is a key element to actually look at is the automation technologies. So there's a huge investment being done because of the rising prices, like raising wages, and the shortage of labor, which is the last point I'm making in this slide. The annual growth for packaging is also huge in this region in Asia, but also it sees a visible rise, of course, after COVID and different elements containing the packaging market, which being also growing for e-commerce. But let me tell you how do I know that? Where do I find the information? I know that European market, which I'm covering with the previous editions of the printing industry and printing packaging market in Europe reports. We have been covering not only the qualitative data, but also the business sentiment of this market. Why am I talking to you about business sentiment? Because you can find numbers everywhere, and as I said, the numbers differ from study to study depending on what you include and what you don't include. You can see different numbers for every industry, and this is actually stable for all over the world. When you talk about sentiment, you're gathering the information about people's feelings about the market, and this speak wealth about how do people see their technology or their printing houses participating in the market and how they're going to go into the future. The key element which I want to also to introduce to you is the element of talent and talent acquisition. In next year's report, we'll be focusing on education, and we see this as a strong point for every market around the world. There's a labor shortage, and the labor shortage is on everyone's words. People don't want to get into the industry. When I went to one of the companies in Poland on the 20-year anniversary of the company, I asked, okay, so how did you get into the industry? Almost every single person told, yeah, I was dragged here by my friend or by family. There's not a single person telling that it's a first choice. And this is the crucial issue which needs to be addressed by our community, because the youth is our future, and if there will be no people to work in the companies, or they will be attracted seldomly rare, we are not going to keep up the growth rates which I've talked to you about before. So this is an initiative we want to promote by Polish Chamber of Printing and also by our alliance with FTA. We want to promote education and the talent acquisition in order to create a stable, global platform for education. And I'll be happy to talk about that during the breaks. So let's talk about the growth drivers, and I'll be continuing to what are the opportunities and challenges. So what are the growth drivers? Sustainability, water-based inks, and eco-adherence is everywhere. And you can see that throughout every presentation throughout this forum, you will see that everyone's talking eco, talking green, because these are the topics we need to address. First of all, to talk about the client's needs and wants, but also to the impact on the environment. Next thing is the automation and the use of AI. When you talk about AI, it's in everyone's tongues. Everyone is speaking, okay, I'm using ChatGPT, I'm using different models. These models are tools. They're not elements to replace, but to use as a hammer to improve the efficiency, the quality, and the other aspects of our production. But you cannot use it as a talking point just to see that, oh, I'm using AI, AI is going to change everything. In order to use it effectively, you need to change quite a lot of things in the production process for you to be able to use the data being generated in the process. Next thing is digital presses, digital hybrid presses and flexo presses, the combination of which is being growing recently. It's about 18% yearly, and the value of the digital press, the model presses market is going to increase up to 15 billion by the year 2030, as far as I remember. And the combination of technologies, even though we're talking about only Flexo, you need to apply that Flexo is good. It's great in many aspects. The combination of technologies, which is called innovation, is even better. So you need to consider First of all, Flexo, and also the combination of technologies, because without that, you don't want to lack in the race in which we are all participating. So, what are the challenges? I spoke about growth drivers. What are the challenges? The challenges are the raising cost of labor and the labor shortages. And these are the things we're not going to run from. We need to address this issue in order to get positive feedback in coming years. This is not going to be a slow process. It is not going to be a fast process. The next thing is the volatile raw materials pricing. In 2024, the price of raw materials increased by 15%. And you don't know what the price change is going to be. There are multiple geopolitical factors which actually influence these aspects, and you need to take it into account. The next thing is compliance to international regulations and environmental standards. These VOC limits will be tightening even further. We said that it's 10% for flexible packaging in India. In upcoming years, it's going to be more and more and more. As I said, Europe is running ahead of everyone with legislation, and we have already mandated changes for 2027. And these elements are going to be the key addressed by companies in order to remain in the race. Because if you're not going to reach the limit, you're going to be out of the race and you cannot produce. That's the case. And the last thing I want to address is supply chain complexity. There is a legislation coming which is called Accident Producer's Responsibility, EPR, which is going to require the producers to be able to, I'll give you a brief example. When you take a book in your hand, you will need to know what will be the tree which is going to be cut down for this book. And this is the extended producer's responsibility, in short words. So these elements interconnecting between each other need to be addressed. But I call them challenges, but these are also opportunities. So e-commerce is booming, and it's expected to grow 12% over the next 5 years. The regulatory movements are towards the greenings, but we already know that. You can address that if you are aware of a risk, or you can change it into an opportunity. So if you address it faster, you can then outpace your competitors. And another thing is, which I spoke about the EPR, this integrated supply chains, aside for requirements, and this requirement being introduced to Europe by 2029, as far as I remember, are the elements which can actually boost your you can boost your, first of all, client's awareness. You can provide more information. You can know where the certain shortages or bottlenecks are coming from. So even though it's a challenge to implement, it will be also a benefit for everyone introducing it into their production chain. And finally, the modular and hybrid presses I already addressed, which are they are the talking point. The increase is it's actually stunning. It's about 10%, and no, it's 18%, but it's going to be even more installed all across the region. And also, if you're not considering combining technologies, you should rethink that. I want to address this as an element which can be a talking point for the next coming years, because depending solely on one technology gives you advantages in, let's say, better runs when it comes to gravure, or Flexo gives you flexibility, and you need to be flexible nowadays. But combination of technologies, for example, digital and Flexo, can give you even more advantages. And finally, the adoption of AI-driven solutions. AI-driven solutions are very beneficial. It improves, for example, it works for quality control. Without object recognition or object recognition, you cannot detect the elements which are faulty from your production line. And this technology is already here. You've been using an AI for the last couple of years without even knowing it, because AI was booming only because ChatGPT was exploding about the usage. But this technology is already there. You're already using it. But the LLMs, which are on the tips of everyone's tongues right now, are just more only usable for administrative work, which I want to address in the end. So we're talking about AI, and everyone is scared that, AI is going to take your job. This is not true. AI is not going to take your job. It's going to simplify some of the elements you were doing day by day, and it's going to free up your time for you to do something else. So you cannot consider adopting AI as a cost reduction element. You need to adopt it as a tool, as a hammer to equip your employees with, for them to use to be able to work more efficiently and better. So what matters most? In my opinion, and according to research I've done, labor is the key element you need to look at, because the shortages will be there, and you need to address the very major element, which is called retention of young employees, because young kids are changing their jobs faster and faster every year, and you cannot keep them up in one place. This is the thing that needs to be addressed in companies. So what matters most? Upskilling, strategic talent acquisition, and building teams that can work effectively and efficiently with the new tools which are available to them. Thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to speaking to you in the couloirs, and thank you so much.